Welcome to the 9th FrogBuildWeekly. This week the focus will be on the War Prism, one of the most important units of Protoss, and so we will be going back to the mechanics and the fundamentals and just practicing using the War Prism. To do this, we open with a War Prism, have the War Prism available at all times during the entire game so that it can deny creep or do other poking or counterattacks. But we also make it extra tricky in the early game to force ourselves to use the War Prism for elevator micro. Yeah. So the plan is instead of getting a Oracle and Phoenix, we get the War Prism and send it across to deny creep and do poking, similar to the Oracle. It will also do scouting similarly. And we get a fast sentry for hallucinated Phoenixes, which can scout instead of the real Phoenixes. So the opening build, let me show you. Here we have the regular gate expand. I think I do gas first. It doesn't really matter. I don't want to mine from it early. So mine from the gas when you have 16 on minerals. You can put 2 in gas instantly if you want to. Expand and then cyber. Here we start warp gates as soon as possible. Also start an adept, which we can chrono boost if we want to. The gas management that I do this game, I can show what I do. I put 19 on minerals and just 2 in the gases here. It's a bit tricky to have 19 on minerals without having the probes be wandering around between the patches, which is a disaster. So you need to stack them manually. But if you don't want to do that, and if you just want to put 3 in gases like normal, that works pretty much equally well. And when the cyber finishes, almost instantly we can afford a robotics. Cyber finishes, warp gate adept, and then we soon have the resources for the robo. 228. Don't want to go into detail too much on the build, but after that we get the gateways so that they block the links from coming in. And right, I think I wrote in the guide that we want an adept as a second unit. You can get a Stalker instead, I think. I'm not sure about this. If you get a Stalker first, the Hallucination Scout is going to be much later, and that could be problematic. But with this build, we stay on 2 bases for quite a long time, so I think this is also 100% safe. But I could be wrong, so getting the sentry faster is definitely the safest option. And of course, if the links were not here, but actually hiding here, and he uses the Overlord as an idiot magnet, then the Stalker can kill the Overlord because we made a full wall. So that's that's the first advantage of having this full wall. And of course, any Baneling Bust, any Ravager attack at this exact time would be weaker than usual. So, sentry as soon as we can. The Immortal comes first from the robo just to be safe, and followed by the War Prism. If we can get this faster, that's nice. So this is what you want to chrono boost. And then we get the Forge when we can afford it. Get extra sentries if we can afford it. That's gonna be... We're relying on these Hallucination Scouts to stay alive. And here we go into the short phase 2, as I described in the guide, in the written guide. So here we use the warp prism to elevate all our units out. We keep them kind of safe still. The idea is to clear this area so that we can take the space, but by also elevating this probe out. And when we keep the prism here, we expect the overlord to sit here, so we can kill that with the stalker and the sentries while the probe goes to expand. And also around this time, we want the hallucination to be scouting. And so there's a fancy thing we can do. If we put the nexus is a 5x5 structure, so if we go by the edge to the edge of that one, so this is the edge of the 2 hexes of the nexus, and then we have 2 hexes here. So we want the pylon here and the shield battery here, and we can build this faster using the ability of the warp prism. And as soon as the overlord is taken out and the shield battery started, we load these units up, go across the map, and the sentries go hide in this little area. And right, as soon as the prism is done, we start one observer. We can rally it to the prism so this doesn't happen, because this helps clearing creep. It can also be nice for scouting later on. Right, we also want to micro this hallucination. One advantage of playing the robo first is that the Zerg might cut spore crawlers. Oh, of course, I'm not saying that's bad for the Zerg. That gives them more economy and so forth, but it also makes it easier to scout with hallucinations, because they can go in the middle and then see everything on the creep. So oftentimes you can just go in the middle if there's no spores, otherwise you have to go around the spores because the hallucinations die very quickly. And also if you're not looking at them, you're not getting any information, so you kind of have to look at them anyway. So microing them is not something you should be sad about. And then as a follow-up, I didn't really write anything. We have the +1, which gives us lots of options. +1 zealots, very good against zerglings. +2 colossi, very powerful against zerglings. But just overall, of course, upgrades are nice. You can take these gases if you want. And then the idea is we cannot walk probes out, but we can recall. So here you need to be a little bit careful not to use the chrono boost here. That might be a habit, to instantly start workers when the space finishes and chrono boost. But you want to refrain from doing that and instead use the recall. Right, I mean the prism micro is pretty straightforward. You usually have the observer following the prism because it's quite fast now. And if there's any danger, that can be a bit of a problem, because if you have an observer, let's say it's sitting here, and then the prism here, and there's queens coming from this side, if you send the prism away to the south, the observer is just going to sit and wait until the warp prism starts accelerating, and then it's going to start moving, and it's going to be a bit behind. And then the queens and the overseer can pick it off. So what you often want to do is you actually want to just box everything, so you get the overseer and the observer and the prism, and then you send it away if the observer is in danger. And what you can do after that is you can box everything, send it away, and then you remain the selection and you hold shift and you right click the prism. So that way the observer will go away and then when it's reached this destination, when it's happy, it will start following the prism again. So that's just a nice micro trick to be able to make this follow happen very quickly. So then you don't get punished for having to do extra actions because you made sure that the observer is safe. Instead, we just have a very solid plan for that. Yeah, and then right, the idea is just to try to defend with what you have here. Use hallucinations to scout and see sometimes the observer also, and then you will see how much units you need to stay safe. If you build just a couple of extra gateways, defense becomes very easy. We already have a couple of gateways, we already have some immortals. After building the first immortal, we can build another immortal and then another prism, so that we can elevate probes between the spaces. And then if there comes an attack which we feel pretty confident against, we can keep harassing with these units endlessly, and that will mean that the creep is interrupted here. Quite significantly. Of course, as I said, in terms of composition, you can choose something for yourself. And right, the second prism has two purposes. It's to elevate units between the spaces and also to be with your army, because this prism should never go home. That's kind of the point of this practice, to always have some prism micro to do. So you want to keep the macros simple, and you want to just focus on microing the prism and using these elevator techniques. So that's the first important. I mean that covers the build when things are going well, when the opponent is playing macro. Then you have some aggressive prism options. But a lot of the time, the opponent will attack, and then you have some defensive prism micro, which is kind of interesting. It's not something we see in this game. This can mean that let's say there's a huge link flood. We have a couple of sentries here, but not that much else to support it. Perhaps we try to warp in some adepts here, or here, maybe force fill them in. Maybe this pylon goes down. This is when the prism becomes very powerful. If we force fill and one unit gets caught outside, we can pick it up. So then the shield battery energy doesn't instantly drain because of that one mistake. If the battery loses power, the prism can help with that. The prism can continue warping in this area, even though the pylon is dead. And we can juggle units around so that weak units can be put behind others. We can keep putting units in the chokes. We can save probes that are weak. So there are a lot of options that I think are worth practicing, and I think that this build will force a lot of those defensive things to happen when the opponent attacks. And if the opponent doesn't attack, well, then you always have something to do with the aggressive prism. And this is just something I like personally. I think prism speed is very fun to play. That's something you can mix in if you play RoboPay. But that's for the transition. There's nothing interesting about this transition to show other than, I guess we can look at the Zerg point of view. We don't have a Phoenix, so there could be overlords here. In some areas, perhaps. At least here. It depends on the map, of course. So that is a bit sloppy by him, but the lack of creep makes it quite hard to attack, and moves like this one are also much more powerful. So when you're playing this creep denial, you may as well use it. May as well play this replay out, but after that I will jump into a different game, which, if I remember correctly, was more defense oriented for the Protoss. Very sloppy micro. Oops. Right. I remember what happened this game. So what happened was I did not pull off the scouting properly, and unlike the previous game where I just had way more than enough to defend, I was caught with not enough units, and that's when the prism micro is very key. I think I may have overdone the sloppiness of the scouting this game though. Let's see. So it looks a lot like the game that I just showed. This is just a small thing, but it's nice to have the melee units on the outside of this choke. It's easy to get the Zealot stuck here and then a sentry outside, for example. It can make quite a big difference against a Link Flood at this time. So here I think I haven't sent out a hallucination yet. Big mistake. See some units but don't really react. Not really spending my money, so I don't have that good infrastructure yet. And this 48 drone attack hits me without me really noticing. So just to be clear, what you should have done here is you should have sent the hallucination scouts out. You should have seen this long before it hits. And what you can do then is you can get more static defense. Against roaches, shield batteries and immortals are just great units. You can recall this one before things get rough, or actually recall is already used, so you can send it home. I was unable to recall it because of that. And then you just build sentries and gateways when you see the attack is coming in like 1 minute. And then you just keep spending your money from there with shield batteries and units, and you should be fine. Instead, things get very tricky here, and that's kind of the interesting part that I wanted to get to. Because now we're forced to use Prism Micro. Send this Prism home only when there is an emergency. Usually you don't want to do that. Yeah, so in this situation there are Zerglings, Immortals are not dealing that much damage. There are way more roaches than I have units. Colossi just was built. Would have been nice to have Disruptor or more Immortals instead. So what I do is I save the important units, as well as some probes with the second prism. And we still have a huge worker advantage, so losing the space is not always that bad. I would probably think I'm behind this game, but actually maybe not even. We have +2 almost finished. There's 700 gas in the bank, which means there's soon gonna be 2 Archons or something else. Also 800 minerals, and there's no way for him to kill me here. Yeah, this might be pretty even soon, but the important thing here is that it's sometimes okay to lose the third base, as long as you don't invest too much in saving it. I should have probably not warped in so many units here that were killed. I lost a lot more. It would have been nice if I didn't do this. If instead I would have just saved the probes and saved everything. And here once again, the full wall is actually helping. But yeah, this is not, as I said, this is not what you're aiming for, but you get to do some micro here. One nice prism trick is to A-move onto one of your units so that the prisms follow. If you just right click, it's gonna pick up, so you need to A-move it or move command it. Have some options to do things like this. I should have probably picked up Immortals instead of Colossi against this Roach army. Not the most interesting micro here to be honest. I was just very crushed very quickly because I didn't have enough. I think I will show some of the stuff I talked about against Zerglings just as micro. Connecting back to this is actually a little bit interesting also. Connecting back to the previous week where we talked about a maxed all-in. What I scouted this game was, I believe I scouted lack of a hive, or at least I assumed it. And because I have such superior upgrades, I have 2 disruptors, I have 2 colossi, I have a very powerful army, while he's stuck on a lot of roaches. So I thought that I'm also very low on economy. I'm low on bases, which means that it's going to be kind of troublesome if the game goes on for 2 more minutes. These minerals are going to start running out. So I wanted to end it, and I had a very powerful army right now. But at the same time, he could be maxed if he just built roaches, so I don't want to attack here. But if I just sit and wait until the max out, he would need Broodlords to beat that, which would be impossible given that there's just a lair. Lurkers would be very tricky to get to since it doesn't have Hydralisks. So this is a great situation to go for the maxed all-in. And this because this army has such good pushback, there's no way he can take a fight into me, so I can do some poking and clear the creep and just wait until I'm ready to attack. See that there's Corruptors, which doesn't really make his army able to fight this +3 army. Just try to use the pushback for as long as possible. I think I actually fight here, which is a mistake. Should have made a full force field wall and just ran away and maxed out. Not sure why I changed my mind, but yeah. army was still strong enough, barely. Right, but getting back to this week's focus, I'm gonna just go back and do some imagination prism micro. So, following this hex pattern, we have a pylon here. If you only have 100 minerals, you want the shield battery first, because it builds slower. And then the pylon. Alright, and then let's pretend we have this army here against... Maybe before we can even set up, there comes a huge flood of links. What do? We pick this up. Or maybe we don't care about the probe. We use these choke areas. Warp in at this areas as well. We probably want the Immortal to take damage here, so maybe we would make something like this instead. And if anything here gets weak, we pick it up. Maybe we make a little bit of room here. drop the Stalker down. Maybe we're forced to reposition. Maybe the Zerglings leave this area and we can retake it. So like juggling units around like this. It's basically what I mean, so just to give you a visual. And if you did recall probes here, that kind of has to get away. What you can do is you can stack them up. Let's do this as well. If there's only 8, you can pick them up and go here. If the prism doesn't have to micro the units. Usually the prism would have to micro the units though. But what you can do is you can try to stack them up, send them here, which are gonna make sure that they're stuck somewhere around this area. And then sometimes they can be saved by a single force field. Then you do the micro, maybe one more force field. And then you can save them when you actually have time for it. So all of these strange techniques that you almost never see in proper games are gonna have to be trained because of this full wall and because you don't have an oracle. And that's yeah, just to summarize, that's what makes this this build interesting, I think. I think that's all for this week. As usual, there's lots of information in the written guide. I also wrote a bit about control groups. So you can check that out if you're interested in the full experience. Otherwise, or either way, I will see you next week probably. Until then, have a good time.